According to the Buddha's teaching, all sentient beings want to be happy. We all have that much in common. That's kind of like the common denominator that we all share. We all desire happiness. You would think that if we all desired happiness, that we could figure out how to get some. And actually, if we view our lives with the limited perspective that we have, we do try to get some, and sometimes we do manage. For instance, we think in very short-term way, we think, I'm hungry and I would be happy if I weren't hungry. So we go and fix ourselves a sandwich. And in that regard, we've managed to make ourselves happy temporarily. Or we might think, what I really want is some new clothes, and that would make me happy. So we go out and get ourselves some new clothes, and for a very short period of time, the new clothes make us happy. And even a new car, we'll think, gee, if I really had a new car, I'd really be happy. And so we go out and get ourselves a new car, and for a short period of time, we feel happy about that. And any of you that have gotten a new car or clothes or a sandwich, you have figured out by now that it's a disappointingly short time that happiness lasts. And that's really what that happiness, the only consistent thing about that happiness is that it is a disappointingly short time. I remember when I got my car, it was an '89 van, and I was so happy about it at first. It was an answer to many problems that I had. One being transportation and the other being how to get a whole family across the country in a very small space. And I felt very happy about the quality of it, and I remember being happy about it for a couple of months. And then immediately it would start to get sticky and gooey with kid mess, and pretty soon it would start to hesitate, and pretty soon it would start to get dirty and not look so new anymore, and then pretty soon the '90 models came out. So what to do? That happiness didn't last for very long. So it's like that for us. The Buddha teaches us, however, that that kind of happiness is obtainable in the sense that it's possible to manipulate our environment in a certain way to get certain things. But that kind of happiness is extremely illusory and very temporary. And it isn't stable. There's no way to predict whether we will really be satisfied with something that we try to get for ourselves. Haven't you ever engaged in some activity that you thought was something you really wanted to do, and you worked for it and you worked for it, and then when you finally got around to really accomplishing it, some of the pizzazz was taken out of it. Somehow it didn't quite make the mark. Somehow it didn't quite do the thing you thought it was going to do. Or perhaps you would accomplish something that would surely make you happy, but the circumstances surrounding it did not contribute to that happiness, and so therefore you found yourself confused, not knowing why. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you that you thought something would make you happy and it's not making you happy? All of us have experienced that, and the Buddha teaches us that that kind of happiness doesn't amount to much, and that it's very unstable, and that we actually spend most of our lives pursuing that. Most of our lives trying to manipulate our environment so that we can get this little piece of happiness, which generally speaking does not work out for us very well. But we continue and we persist. The difficulty with that is that sometimes manipulating our environment in the way that we seem fit actually produces unhappiness, and we don't get it. We don't know it. For instance, let's say in our buying of a new car, we somehow in our minds, in a very subtle way that we don't realize, feel very happy about that car and kind of unconsciously create it with the other cars that drive on the highway. You know we do that, don't you? We all do that. We look at our car and we say, nice car I have, rotten car you have, or hey, time to go to Midas, or something like that. We always have this idea about the fact that what we have might be a little bit better than what someone else has. And when we say that, we think that we're being happy about it. And it brings us kind of a funny but short sense of satisfaction to think that our car is better than some others that we see. But according to the Buddha, what's actually happening there that's insidious and very hidden is that in our minds there is a process of sort of decay happening, in that we are then accumulating non-virtuous activity. Because what's really happening is we're saying, it's more important to me to be happy and to have what I want than it is for them to be happy, that's others, to be happy and have what they want. And I'm more concerned with what I have than I am with what they have. And I would like to be superior to them. And I would like to have more than them. What we're actually creating within our minds is the karma of selfishness and self-absorption. Now, when we're being happy about our car, we can't see that we're doing that. We're in a kind of a state of confusion. It's almost like we're drunk, in a way, with this temporary satisfaction that we feel, and we can't really sense that what we're doing is producing the cause and effect relationships that will someday cause us to suffer. But the Buddha teaches us that somewhere down the road, because we have had this idea of selfishness, because we have had this idea of wanting to have more than others, because we have cared more for our own pleasure than the well-being of others, and because we literally have been happy that we have a new car and have seen without any sorrow and probably with some kind of perverse gratification other people, like maybe whole families that are so poor they're driving in a clunker of a car. We've seen that with some satisfaction, and that is registered somewhere in our mind streams. And because of that, we've accumulated a certain non-virtue and a habitual tendency also to grasp and to honor desire and to allow the ego to kind of run away with itself and be unbalanced. But what the Buddha teaches us is that somewhere down the line, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 10 years, maybe in 40 years, and it may not be in this lifetime at all. Due to that pattern and habitual tendency that we have developed of non-virtue and selfishness in our minds, even though it seemed like no big deal, then in the future, we ourselves will experience being on the other end of that stick. We will experience the discomfort of having less than others. We will experience the discomfort of being in a place where we are impoverished. According to the Buddha, it is not a lack of money that really causes impoverishment, but what causes impoverishment is a lack of generosity, which produces a lack of money. According to the Buddha, cause and effect relationships are exacting. If we in our minds want our happiness and don't care much about the happiness for others, we will have a hard time being happy. A very hard time. In fact, according to the Buddha's teaching, it will be impossible. Only when we practice generosity in the way we saw the children practicing generosity will we ourselves have the karmic potential for happiness. If you think about it, you know that this is true and that it's reasonable. Because you know that there have been times in your lives when you should have been happy. You had every reason to be happy. You might have even had everything you needed. You might have been in a situation where it was a terrific day and everything was going well for you, but you didn't feel happy. Or you might have been in another kind of situation where no matter what you did, you just could not get happiness. You've done all the other things that other people are doing. You tried to get a good job, you tried to look nice, you tried to have relationships, you tried to keep busy, you tried to think positive, and you really worked at thinking positive, and all those other things. Yet, somehow, you just couldn't get happy. You just couldn't nail the happy thing down. All the other people around you seem to be doing it. That's what you think, of course. It isn't true, but that's what you think. And it seems that you can't. That this hidden problem remains unsolved within your heart. What you're seeing at that time, according to the Buddha, is the ripening of previous karma, previous causes that were brought about and are now ripening. The seed was planted a long time ago, and now what you're seeing is the fruit coming up. Unfortunately, when we try to get happy, thinking that it's very hard for us to get happy, what we really try to do is to manipulate our environment, which has a 50-50 chance of producing more unhappiness, actually. We might buy ourselves another car and still be happy that we're the best looking car on the road. Or we might try to take some approval that someone else might have rightfully gotten and try to upstage them. And it might make us happy for about 10 minutes and yet produce in our minds the causes for future unhappiness. A future time where no matter what we do, no one ever approves of us, no how. According to the Buddha's teaching, these things that we do are chancy at best. They are unstable, and they don't always produce the kinds of causes that we would like to see produced. And they don't result in what we want. But we work so hard at what we do. According to the Buddhist teachings, human beings are really noble creatures. They work really hard at being endlessly distracted. Endlessly distracted by what they want, endlessly distracted by their environment, endlessly distracted by what they can't have, endlessly distracted by the hard work that they put in trying to get all the things that they can't have. There's no doubt about it. We work really hard. These things that I have just talked about are what we call the faults of cyclic existence. The cycle of death and rebirth is faulted in that it is unpredictable in the sense that we understand predictability. We really aren't able to look at our lives and see what the fruit of it is going to be, because we think in a very short time frame. The most time that we can possibly understand is from the time of our birth to the time of our death. 85, 90 years at the outside. Probably shorter. But we can only understand that because that's the only time in which we've seen things happen. If we want to understand long-term cause and effect, and that's really the only way to get the results that we want, because cause and effect scenarios do take very often more than one lifetime to ripen. We have to rely on information that we don't have, thus the unpredictability and instability of cyclic existence. In other words, you can't judge by what you see. But what are you supposed to do? If you can't tell by what you see, if you really don't know what the causes that you have brought about are going to produce, where are you supposed to put your faith? What are you supposed to do? You can't even rely on your five senses. Let's just use a silly example. Let's imagine the story of two little kids, brothers, let's say, that are sleeping together in the same bed, and let's say it's very cold out. Let's say that one brother decides that he's freezing, and it's really cold in his bedroom, and what he really wants to do is get warm. So he pulls the quilt away from the other brother, and he wraps himself up in it, and for that night, he's warm. But his brother is really cold. And maybe his brother is really uncomfortable that night and wakes up with a cold, or at least has a bad night's sleep. Well, the one brother that got the quilt is going to think very strongly that he'd solved his problem. He's going to think that he was comfortable, and that kind of comfort he knew was true because he felt with his own senses, with his own five senses, he could tell that his body felt better because he wrapped himself up real tight. But his five senses have lied to him because he's not going to feel better. In some future time, karma is that exacting. That little boy will be cold and will not be able to solve his problem. Will it be that sometimes he's poor and he can't pay the gas bill? Will it be that he and a bunch of others like him, who also took blankets from their brothers, will be born in a place where heat is hard to come by? Who knows? Who can say? I don't know how to predict that. But here is a case, a silly case of course, but a case in which our own five senses really can't be trusted. Are we just moving down the garden path, deeper and deeper into delusion? Striking out endlessly, trying to manipulate our circumstances in order to make ourselves happy, but ultimately digging ourselves in deeper and deeper? Is that what we're doing? According to the Buddha, that's exactly what we're doing. And that is the fault of cyclic existence, is that it is not understandable with the ways that we have to understand, with the five senses and with the mind that can only see from the time of birth to the time of death. Now it's become fashionable nowadays for people to think that they have clairvoyant abilities and to feel that they are psychic. And in fact, there are some people that have clairvoyant abilities and some people that are psychic. But no one but a fully enlightened Buddha is able to really see all the cause and effect relationships that have gone to create this present moment. The Buddha is considered to have two great capacities. One is the capacity for wisdom, that is, to understand the primordially empty nature, to view that nature and to be awake within that nature, and also to understand, to have the knowledge of all cause and effect relationships. So one who has achieved supreme realization as the Buddha has achieved would know all of the cause and effect relationships that have come to bring us to this present moment. There are many stories in which a disciple would come to the Buddha and the Buddha would see the disciple and see all of the cause and effect relationships that brought this disciple to a terrible moment of suffering that would inspire him to finally lay down cyclic existence and pick up the path in desperation. And the Buddha would be able to minister to that disciple in a specific way as to deal with the specific kind of suffering. It's from that kind of experience that the Buddha laid out the path, seeing all the cause and effect relationships that bring us to these moments. The Buddha knows the many hundreds and thousands of ways of accumulating non-virtue, and also has given us the many hundreds and thousands of ways of accumulating virtue as an antidote to that non-virtue. But still we remain in cyclic existence, and for some reason feel that we must try to fumble our way around. Without the benefit of those teachings, we generally do a mixed job of it. Interestingly, sometimes the understanding is very superficial. I know of many people who sort of get the idea, through osmosis and diffusion and through some of the religious and spiritual ideas that are floating around these days, due to the efforts of the world's major religions and also due to some of the sort of New Age spiritual ideas. They get the idea that one should be kind, and that if one were kind, there would be some goodness in it or some reward in it. They have it intellectually in their minds. But it doesn't go very deep, because when they themselves experience loneliness, or when they themselves experience a lack of love in their lives, or lack of approval, or when they themselves are suffering in some particular way, they still blame the external environment. That person is at fault. That person did it to me. That person took their love away from me, and for that reason I am suffering. They don't really say, what I'm seeing now is definitely the cause of my previous activity. That I can actually see my activity by viewing what I'm experiencing now. If I can't quite put ends together, if I can't get a job, if I can't make my life come in order, if I can't do the things that I want to do. Generally, people will see that as caused by their environment. It's because of this reason, because I have not enough education or too much, or because people don't like the way I look, or because this person doesn't like me in particular, or because of this and this and this and this and this. We can think up all kinds of reasons. We can architect all kinds of reasons. We can just build them up. We can engineer them. But rarely do we have the depth and ability to perceive that what we are seeing now is an exact reflection of our previous activities. And we don't want to see that. Because if we see that, we have to take responsibility for what we do. And we have to look at ourselves in a new way. And it's really hard to do. It's really hard. Which is why, to my mind, the Buddha's teaching requires more courage than mostly anything else we have ever done or ever will do. Because you have to accept the precept that you can look at what you're experiencing now, good and bad, and tell exactly what you've done in your previous life. You do not need a psychic for that. Look at your life. Look at what you're suffering. Look at what you're happy about. Look at what you feel. Look at what your view is. Look at what your habitual tendencies are like. And you'll see for certain what your previous experience has been like, what you have done in previous lives. You don't need anyone to tell you. The fault of cyclic existence is that we can't always see clearly, and we don't always accept responsibility. And the difficulty is that, therefore, we have no way to apply the antidote. Because if you don't identify the disease, diagnose it, and really understand its repercussions, and really take responsibility for it, you can't apply the antidote. If you don't know that what you have is a headache, you won't know to take an aspirin. Or if you don't know that what you have is a bacterial infection, you won't know to take something to antidote it. You can't identify it. Furthermore, if you think that bacterial infections just come to you because the gods have given them to you, and they leave when the gods, according to their whim, take them away, then you are powerless to take any medicine. You'll sit and you'll wait. And you might wait long enough to overcome, to live longer than your disease, but you might also die from it. It's pretty chancy. And the fault of cyclic existence is that we do not understand, that we are wandering in a kind of drunkenness or delusion that causes us to keep perpetuating the very activities that make for suffering. When I began to study the Buddha's teaching, I felt in my own mind that this was like a rope being thrown into a black hole. Because students could study the Buddha's teaching and they could receive the perspective of a mind that has the capability of viewing all the cause and effect relationships that have come to make this moment. And therefore, that mind has the ability to offer the method or the activity that would act as an antidote to these cause and effect relationships. The Buddha offers the kinds of activities that you saw the children involved in: meditation, generosity, recitation, visualization, learning, teaching, praying, contemplation, and offering. These are the activities that are virtuous activities and act as antidotes to the previous non-virtuous activities that we have engaged in. But we have to study them well enough to really understand them. We have to study them well enough to know that, for instance, with generosity, it isn't enough to know that generosity is good. One has to really understand how to apply it deeply, how to practice it to the extent that it permeates the entirety of your life. and actually takes over your mind. That you develop the habit pattern or habitual tendency of supreme generosity. Not only the generosity of being happy when someone else has a new car also, but the supreme generosity of wishing solely to be of benefit to sentient beings. Only that. Wishing only that. Of wishing that in this life and in every future life, that your life would be a vehicle by which all sentient beings would be liberated from the causes of suffering. By making prayers that from this moment on, by knowing that you've seen enough suffering, and knowing that from this moment on you wish to turn your life so that it would be a basket of generosity, food, if you will, for all those who are suffering to eat from. That's supreme generosity, and it's pretty intense. But maybe it takes that much to antidote the aeons and aeons of cyclic existence that, according to the Buddha, we have been involved in which we were selfish. And maybe the best generosity is the kind that even gets past that cause and effect idea, but wishes to be generous, wishes to be loving, simply because we have seen enough suffering, and enough is enough. This is the method that the Buddha teaches. The Buddha teaches that this works. I can see it. Sounds logical to me. Sounds like it would work a heck of a lot better than wishing I had the best car on the road. Seems real to me. But even if it didn't seem real to me, I have to assume that since the Buddha was enlightened and I am not, and since the Buddha wishes to engage in delivering to us the method by which we can cross the ocean of suffering just as he has done, I have to assume that this method is workable. How does this fit in with the current theme that we have been involved in? And that theme has to do with understanding the mind, one's own nature, as the ultimate object of refuge. It fits in like this. First, ask yourself, what is common, what is ordinary in terms of perspective in this day and age? What's common is to wait for things to get better. What's common is to think that things are happening to us. What's common, the ordinary view, is to assume that phenomena is what it is, and that's what I have to work with. What's common is to be a victim. According to the Buddha's teaching, that will produce a very mixed result, probably not much good. But instead, one should engage in understanding direct cause and effect relationships. And in doing that, take responsibility for them. If you want to overcome loneliness, then be extremely kind to others. Be extremely supportive of others. Speak well of others. Go out of your way to help others. Not when it's convenient, but when it hurts. Go beyond what's simple. Look for it. That's the antidote to loneliness. If you're experiencing poverty, then apply the antidote of supreme generosity, and also the antidote of ordinary generosity. If you are impoverished and you only have $1, give a nickel to someone who could use it. If you are impoverished, give an offering. Offer a butter lamp. Offer a candle. Offer a flower. You can pick them. They're cheap. Not here, I'd prefer. But you can pick them. But you can offer them to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and in this way, create the karma of offerings. These are the kinds of activities that you can engage in that, according to the Buddha's teachings, will eventually, perhaps not immediately, alleviate suffering. And now another fault of cyclic existence is demonstrated by the fact that I have students come to me all the time and say, I was generous for an entire week, and nobody loves me yet. Well, la-di-da, because you were not generous for aeons and aeons of cyclic existence. You may have a few things to do just yet. You may have to do it for a whole year, maybe a whole lifetime, maybe a couple. But to take refuge in your own mind is to begin intelligent, sophisticated technology that the Buddha has taught now. To begin now is the only intelligent thing to do. To begin to engage in this sophisticated technology so that you can apply the antidote to your suffering must start immediately. And it must be engaged in with fervent regard, with faith, and with discipline. We have the tendency to wait until we feel generous. So on maybe Thursday, sometimes on Thursdays I tend to feel a little generous. So I'll see if I can be generous on Thursday, because that's my good day. Who are we kidding? That's crazy. Generosity starts with discipline. Of course you're not particularly generous by nature. That's what got you into this fix. So you apply the discipline of generosity. You learn how. People that are born generous have applied the discipline of generosity in some previous time. People that are born free of a lot of desire have applied the discipline of renunciation in some previous time. People that are born beautiful have applied the discipline of virtuous behavior in some previous time. So instead of waiting around for times to change and for the wind to shift, instead of waiting around for others to come through for you, because you can wait forever doing that, instead of waiting around for the answers to float between your ears, instead of waiting for a voice from heaven or judgment day or doomsday when the others will get what they're due, because we think like that too, you know. Instead of waiting for all of the things that we wait for, we actually take refuge in our own primordial wisdom nature when we realize completely and fully that the ball is in our court, that we have to hit it back, that we can apply the antidote now. We're free to do that, and we're free to do it in a slipshod way, or very well, or not at all. That's our freedom. And some people don't like that freedom, see, because they'd rather believe that there is an external power that is going to give to them what they need. If I'm very, very good, maybe God will love me. Or even if I'm not very, very good, maybe because God is good, God will love me. Or maybe if I say hallelujah every now and then maybe God will love me. Well, the Buddha doesn't teach that. The Buddha teaches, let's take maybe out of it completely. Let's take responsibility. Let's get that cause and effect relationship plays itself out, that karma is exacting, and that it ripens. The great thing about this scenario is that in this scenario you get what you want. And if what you want is to be happy, you can produce the causes of happiness. You have that power. No one, not even Lord Buddha himself, can take that power away from you. It is natural, and it is in accordance with the law, if you will, the laws of nature in cyclic existence, and it is most assuredly in accordance with the nature of your mind. And you also have the choice as to when you might start. You can start later, which will produce results later. Or you can start tomorrow, which may begin to produce results tomorrow. Or you can start now, which is a good time. The upshot of all of this, I think, is a sense of power and a sense of maturity. Children are the ones that wait for Christmas. Children are the ones that hope we buy them something. Children are the ones that thrash around and build some things up and knock some things down because they don't understand how things work. We're supposed to be grown up. How is it the children are understanding what the scoop is better than we are? We need the maturity to accept that what we are now is a direct result of what we've been before, and that what we will be in the future will be a direct result of what we produce now. We need to accept that kind of understanding in order to be mature human beings, ripe with the potential of achieving the auspicious result of enlightenment. There is a method. You have the power to follow it. There is the antidote to every single kind of suffering that you have ever or will ever experience, and you have the power to apply it. No one can take that power away from you. Neither can anyone force it down your throat and make you walk through the door of liberation. Only you can do that. And you'll do it on your own steam. All of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that have achieved the auspicious result, Lord Buddha himself, the historical Buddhas that came before him. I'm thinking of all the Buddhas that the children named, Amitabha and Chenrezig and Vajrasattva, and all of the ones that we have teachings about that operate in this world and in other worlds. And there are many Buddhas. They all, at one time, were sentient beings just like us. Every one. With the same potential Buddha nature inherent within them, just as you have, full and ripe and ready. And they all engaged in the kind of activity that we're talking about now, and thus achieved the auspicious result, due to the awareness and the awakening to their own intrinsic Buddha nature. You have that nature. You have the capacity to awaken to that nature by applying the technology. That being the case, why not use it? Nanda.